Hi, I'm Parker, and I use they, them pronouns.
Hi, I'm Mike, and I use he, him pronouns. And welcome to the Graphic Novel Podcast. Welcome to another exciting show of the Graphic Novel Podcast, the show where we discuss graphic novels, zines, other comics, throw in a mini comics too, throw in a bit of real life.
Sometimes we talk about queer issues. Sometimes we talk about race issues. Sometimes we talk about death, relationships, all kinds of good stuff.
We haven't, but we usually have a new episode every week. And hopefully starting today, we will be back on schedule for hopefully the considerable future. But every Friday, we have a new episode. If you like the show, we'd love it if you went to Apple Podcasts and gave us 5 stars. Gave us a review if you really like it. Or go to Spotify, YouTube, or any one of those places that you listen to podcasts and let them know how you feel about our show.
Make sure that you subscribe so every time we have a new episode, it pulls right up into your feed and is waiting there for you to listen when you are ready. Most importantly, make sure that you share the podcast with your friends. That is the best way to help us grow.
That's not the only way I grow. You can interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Insta. And if you visit us at anchor.fm/graphic novel podcast, you can leave us a voice message and we'll probably let it air, whether it's a good or bad one, because we want people to know what you think.
Yeah, you can leave a bad message. We'll probably make fun of you.
That is entirely possible.
On air. So see how bad you can make it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we should have
welcome
a contest. How bad can you tell us our show is?
No, don't. It makes me feel like shit.
It would make me feel really bad. Anyhow, Parker.
Speaking of anxiety.
4.0 Parker.
Oh, stop it.
No, come on. You got to be proud of what you're doing. Got through the first quarter.
First quarter down.
Back in school.
I have to get the high grades so I can pull up my cumulative.
Yes, but I mean,
because when I was 16 in college, I didn't put in the effort.
Okay, but you did. You did this time, along with COVID, being stuck at home with 2 kids who are also doing online school. I mean,
our poor children.
Really, really proud of you. It's amazing what you did.
Thank you.
And yeah, and so yes, everything's still going. It's not getting better. It's getting worse, which we've known. Anybody that wears a mask knows that it was going to get worse at some point.
Yeah, and it's so funny to see people from around the country talking about their kids in school. And like there was a TikTok that my friend sent me that somebody's kid had a bad day at school and they came home and had some sparkling grape juice with orange juice. They had their own non-alcoholic mimosa.
Day. Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, oh man, that kid's in school right now. Yep. How that is such a strange thing to me. Obviously, the area doesn't have very bad COVID cases or they're social distancing or whatever, but
yeah. But yeah,
I mean, would it take a week for schools to open and close here?
It was about that, yeah. It was pretty quick, but yeah. So let's see. It's been several weeks since we've had a new episode. We're going to be back on schedule now because Parker's off for a month, so we're going to jam up on shows, and we're going to have them ready every week. Get a new show out, and we'll be back on schedule for you. But we're going to do this show. I've got so many books that previews that I've been
every
able
week.
To read.
Every time, every episode, that you say the exact same thing.
And I've got so many. And
it's like that Star Trek episode where
I just don't know.
Are in a loop.
What to?
Does it feel like deja vu to you?
It's always deja vu.
Everybody listening is like,
that episode we just watched.
Yeah.
But so there's a ton of books. So one that is a really good book that I decided that I'm going to talk about today is it's from Titan Comics, and it's called Muhammad Ali, Kinshasa. I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. Let me just go back to the beginning here. It's Kinshasa, 1974. And what this was Muhammad Ali's, it says on the 30th October 1974, the most famous boxing match of the 20th century took place. Nicknamed the Rumble in the Jungle, which even if you don't know anything about boxing, you've probably heard that saying at some point. It pitted Muhammad Ali, desperate to win back his world champion belt, and George Foreman, the current holder, against each other. Foreman had just KO'd the only two boxers who have ever beaten Ali. By his own admission, Ali was terrified of facing him in the ring. Now, the photojournalist Abbas immortalizes this legendary meeting, having kept his photos in his personal archives for 36 years before unveiling them to the world. In a cross between a documentary, photo report, and graphic novel, this book reveals the context of the most powerful photographs taken by one of the greatest photographers of the Magnum Photos Agency. Enriched by the testimony of Abbas himself, Jean-David Morvan's
Testimony.
What did I say?
Testimony.
Oh, testimony? What did I say?
Testimony.
Testimony of Abbas himself, Jean-David Morvan's script is rigorously brought to life by artist Raphael Ortiz. And the whole thing, again, it's from Titan Comics, $29.99. It is an amazing book. There are photos mixed in with artwork, like throughout the entire thing.
Very cool.
And it tells the story from the photojournalist perspective, and it tells the background story of. In fact, they met with him at one point, and they're like, he's like, this story isn't about me. It's not enough about me.
Oh.
And he seemed a little angry. And once they explained the whole thing to him, he was like, okay, I get it. I get how it all works together. And he was cool with it. But it's black and white photos, color photos, and this great artwork that just on the same page, you'll have a photo and art. One of their decisions was there would be no copying. Like if there was a photo done, they wouldn't do a drawing of it. So they would take maybe a different perspective of something. So there was never anything that was like duplicated from something that he had already photographed, I should say.
Okay.
And it's got the whole thing. It tells about how this came about, where Muhammad Ali started. It was basically a little bio of him and of George Foreman, and how Foreman, both of them had been Olympic stars, which was interesting. I don't think I remembered that because obviously this was when I was.
Wait, there's boxing in Olympics?
Yeah.
Is there still?
Summer boxing? Yeah, in the Summer Olympics.
I didn't realize that. I don't think I've ever watched boxing.
It was bigger years ago, 70s with Howard Cosell.
Now it's like MMA and
yes, exactly.
And
it's more brutal stuff.
What's the other one called? The one that's like there's no rules. Is that MMA?
Yeah. Well, all the mixed martial arts, all of that, any of those where they do that, where where they fight in the octagon and they just pound each other to death and there's blood everywhere.
There's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
It's so gross.
Sometimes they're former boxers, but a lot of times they're martial artists.
Right.
And there is rules, but I mean.
There is some kind of which one is it? There is no rules.
There are some rules.
Am I like making up something in my head?
No, probably not.
It looks like they're killing each other.
I know. So what happens is it tells the whole story. And how many pages is it? It's pretty big. Excuse me. 137 pages. And it's interesting. I was saying about the Olympics.
Sorry.
Muhammad Ali, he was born Cassius Clay, but he embraced Islam and he changed his name to Muhammad Ali.
Is that part of the book?
Yep. It talks about that.
He was okay with that. Sharing information.
Muhammad Ali is dead.
I thought you said they talked to him.
No, they talked to Abbas, the photojournalist, which this is based on. This is about him, not about Muhammad Ali.
Okay, sorry, I was confused.
The story is about Muhammad Ali, but it's based on the photos of this photojournalist. Muhammad Ali died.
Is that like general knowledge, though?
Yes, Muhammad.
Okay.
I
don't know anything about.
He was
Muhammad
a
Ali.
conscientious objector to the Vietnam War.
And I knew. Okay, yes. I do know that.
Yeah, so that was. So yeah, that was a big deal.
But I'm saying, like, does he want that information publicized?
Yes. He had Parkinson's too. He died of Parkinson's. He died from that. Probably getting hit in the head so many fucking times.
There is environmental reasons for.
I'm sure.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were saying like when I've never really paid attention. I never read a bio on him or anything, but apparently when he was a kid, he just had natural ability. He was a skinny little kid, and he went to a gym and he started training. And The trainer said that he only would have to show him like a move one time,
Wow.
and he would know it. And he had the natural ability to do it all. And what happened was with George Foreman. Well, back to the Olympics. In the Olympics, Ali was one of those ones when it was during like the Vietnam War, and when the black athletes refused to put their hand over their heart or whatever when they won. Instead, they raised their fist in the air.
Right.
That was a big thing. Ali was part of that.
Right. Okay.
So a lot of people, they had some issues with him. Well, George Foreman was like the complete opposite. He was like, only in America could I have done all these things and become a superstar and do all these things. So in Africa, when they fought this fight there, the people took to Muhammad Ali and not to Foreman.
Interesting.
Because they had been colonized. It had been a colonized country, and they changed their name and everything. So they related more to Muhammad Ali than they did to George Foreman. Foreman was huge. Ali said that there's no way he was going to beat him. I mean, he didn't say that in public, but he knew that George Foreman was huge, strong, and there was no way he could beat him. The only way he could do it was to outlast him.
Wow, really?
So he basically taunted him in the ring to keep him going and took hundreds of punches. He just took the punches in order to outlast him until Foreman tired himself out and he was able to win.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he killed himself. I mean, he ended up dying of Parkinson's. I mean, it was not, I'm sure it didn't contribute. I mean, it had to have contributed. He just took punch after punch from this man who had, it was like getting hit with a brick. So, but anyhow, excellent book.
Parkinson's is actually something that, my grandfather had Parkinson's. And he got it because he was in something had happened, or it became more severe because he was in the hospital and they gave him some kind of medication that interacted with a different medication and it changed the rest of his life. Now he was older when it happened,
right?
But it severely changed his personality.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you didn't meet him until after that had occurred.
Okay, yeah.
But and then reading this, I was just reading the new Michael Fox book, Michael J. Fox, and talking about his the things that happened to him that were the environmental factors he believes.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know what it was, but he knows that 2 other people that he was on a show with also were diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't enough to be called a cluster. So
cluster fucking Stettin.
Yeah. So anyway, that was really off topic. But it's interesting because I don't know that I ever knew before, it was part of my life, that there was environmental factors that can cause it. I mean, I think it's genetic. There's genetic things too, which is scary for me because, it's in my gene pool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
just don't go swimming there.
In Molson.
In the gene pool. I wouldn't go swimming in Molson either.
That was such a dad joke.
Anyhow.
Anyway, back to boxing.
but the book is fantastic. It is a great book. From
the art looks amazing too.
Yeah, it was a really good book. And like I said, there's a bunch of history. There's the story behind the story. How the boxer you know what, they even threw in, they asked the Abbas, I'm assuming that's Abbas. I'm not sure how you say his the artist, the photojournalist name. He died, I think, before this was finished too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he was on board with it. What they did was they said, "Well, tell us something that we don't know." So he told them this little thing about a sexcapade he had during this whole thing. And
really?
Yeah. So they put it in the book. They're like, there, you got your little piece of the story in the book now.
Oh my God, your little peas. I'll give you a crumb.
No. I mean, the whole story is about him. I mean, it's from his point of view and stuff.
But it's not. He said it's not.
He didn't think it was enough about him.
Okay, but that's his. I don't know. That's shitty, I think. I don't know.
No, he was okay with it then.
Oh, but just having that little crumb was enough.
Yeah, it was good.
Oh,
Fun. Anyhow,
I
it was a good.
I
Book.
don't know.
It's
that,
a good book. It's not your decision.
Okay, it's not my decision. That
all
is
right.
very
So
true.
another book. Another book. Penultiman, like penultimate, but it's Penultiman.
Okay, wait. I just want to go back to it 1 second because I'm stuck on it. So here is my thought process on how this went.
Okay, it's in the book. You can read it.
They talk about the discussion.
They have a whole story in the back on how it all went down.
But do you think they were honest about it? Like,
why wouldn't they be?
Because it's their side of the story, so it's always like how they felt about it.
They said they met him, and he was very cold at first, a little distant and stuff. But once they started talking and everything, he opened up, and everything just kind of worked out. But
okay, but my thought is this guy's like, I don't really want you to do it, and they're like, well,
no. He was already on with doing the book. They had already convinced him.
Yeah, see, there's the key right there. They had convinced him. So he was like,
okay, I just use that word. I don't know that that's actually what it was.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter how it works.
I guess not. It's out there.
He consented to it.
But is it consent if you were coerced into doing it?
It was his work. He didn't have to give up the photos.
Okay, right. His
so
photos
he agreed.
So
to
he
it.
had to be.
Yes,
he had to be willing to say.
Yes,
he had to be. Okay
he just wanted more of the story about him.
Well, I mean that makes sense. I mean
sure.
It's a story about him and his work, and
and this,
I'm sure they talked about the photographs
and this event.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, okay, I understand. But I thought they said, well, we're going to do it with or without you.
But
so.
No.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, but giving him that little thing about his little sexcapade with 2 women and stuff.
Do you feel like that was like something that I see? See now because now I'm questioning everything. He's like, I want to sound like I don't sound cool enough for something. You know what I mean? Like I want something edgy in there about my life. I just sound like this boring photographer or something. Which of course he's not. Photographer.
He talks about that how photographers don't talk. He doesn't like when photographers talk about. Well, yeah, I got my first camera when I was 12, and he says,
because
I don't like that kind of stuff. Well,
interesting.
He was like that too.
Oh,
but he doesn't.
But that's what people love. I love reading that about people.
As a photographer, hated that. He said he hated knowing all that shit. It didn't. I don't know if that's I don't know if he started taking photos as a kid or not until an adult. But either way, it was. He just didn't like those backstories, so he didn't want that to be part of his story either.
Huh.
So when he met them, he thought they were gonna. He probably thought they were gonna do that, and instead they're like, "No, we're gonna do this story this way." But you give us something about you. Give us some story that nobody knows that we can put in here to make it more about you. So it's not just about the average photographer.
Very good. Very good.
All right. So this other book, Penultiman. It's from Ahoy Comics. I've read the first 2 issues. He's a superhero from another planet. Lives on Earth, but he has a like a cyborg copy of him that
what?
It's called Anti-Penultiman. So he can help him out because there's always so much stuff going on.
Right.
So he has to he's kind of been banished to Earth by his parents. He's
oh my God.
Yes. So he has to do this stuff. So he's hoping that one day they will call him back. So they've got some big disaster on their home planet and they call him back. So he's like, all right, this is my opportunity to go home and fix everything. And maybe I can get to stay and I don't have to be stuck on Earth anymore.
I don't blame you. I'm not happy about being stuck on Earth either.
But so he leaves his clone basically in charge. After he helps his home planet, they're like, okay, well, you can go back now. We don't really want.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, so the first 2 issues, it's pretty good. I like it. Artwork and story is interesting. It's let's see, writer is by Tom Payer. Alan Robinson is artist. Lee Lowride is the colorist, and Rob Steen is letterer. It's created by Tom Payer and Alan Robinson. And it's good. I like it. It's interesting, a little different superhero take, and got a bad guy in there.
Always got to have the bad guy.
Yeah, but it's good. I liked it.
Good.
All right. But anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, you want to get into the main event then?
Let's get into the main event.
All right. Any day now. All right. This week, we are going to we're going to talk about a book called, it's an anthology called Everything is Going Wrong. It was edited by Mark Bouchard. It's comics on punk and mental illness.
Everything is Going Wrong. Comics on Punk and Mental Illness is a 150-plus page, full-color comic anthology featuring over 40 stories by comic creators and punk musicians. All proceeds benefit the Trevor Project, and Music Cares at a 75-25% split. EIGW was kickstarted successfully in May of 2018.
All right, so Mark Bouchard, this is off of his website, which is called Bark Bouchard instead of Mark Bouchard. And he's writer and editor. Says, you might know me as the creator-editor of Everything is Going Wrong, comics on punk and mental illness. Comic anthology featuring 60-plus comic creators and musicians, including members of Every Time I Die, I don't know if it's HIRS Collective or HERS Collective, and Mom Jeans, benefiting the Trevor Project and Music Cares. Also writer. I wrote the graphic novella, It Took Luke. I've got short comics in Corpus, Everything is Going Wrong, and Deadbeats from a Wave Blue World. My work mainly consists of dark fantasy horror and comic adaptations of punk songs. I am one half of Coffee Breath Press. The other half is Shelby Criswell, and our official projects will be announced in late 2020. I have written about comics for Panel X Comics and the Comics MNT. I also write for the Hard Times. So, the book is an interesting book, and I believe I want to say that I picked this up when COVID was roaring early on, and this was one of those books that I had got when people were saying, "Hey, help an artist out," and I got this one from Haley Boros.
I just want to say real quick before we get into the episode, I said about Trevor Project and Music Care, so I'm just going to
go ahead. Talk
quick little snippet. The Trevor Project, providing confidential support for LGBTQ youth in crisis 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a national 24-hour toll-free confidential suicide prevention service for LGBTQ youth, crisis support, LGBTQ community, life-saving volunteers, resources and guides. Founded in 1998, and so they're doing some amazing things over at the Trevor Project. And if you are LGBTQ and needing support, they are an awesome resource. The trevorproject.org is someplace that you can go and get that.
And this is the holidays when a lot of people start feeling depressed.
Yes, reach out. If you're feeling that way, you don't have, unfortunately, in this country, we do not have access to mental health support the way that we need to. And it shows. Yeah. And especially with COVID happening, depression rates are super high and people aren't reaching out. And it's easy. It's so easy to ignore it because you're not supposed to, you're not supposed to see your family and friends right now, and so that makes it that much harder to reach out to people. I will admit I have really sucked at reaching out to my friends because I've just been so preoccupied with stuff. So I've been trying to make an effort to try and reach out to some people and just check in, say, how you doing? I know my friend Nikki jumped off Facebook for a while because it was just too much. And I was like, oh my God, I have not seen or heard from her in so long. I just need to send a message. And I just stopped and did it right then. Just check in. How you doing? So reach out to your friends. It doesn't matter if you think they have depression or if you know they've battled depression in the past, whatever, just reach out to your friends. Anyway.
Music Cares.
Music Cares. Music Cares provides a safety net of critical assistance for music people in times of need, treating each case with integrity and confidentiality. Music Cares wasn't one that I had heard about before. Had you heard of that before?
It sounds familiar, but I'm not sure.
And it's Grammy.com/Music Cares.
Oh, so it's from the Grammy?
That's what comes up. And it's Music Cares with only one C, MUSICARES.
Yeah.
But it's on the Grammys, Grammy.com. So you can find the link from there, or you can just search Music Harris and find it.
Yeah. All right, I'm just looking something up real quick. I swear that I've heard. No, maybe not. I thought that I had a band I knew had done something for that, but there's probably been bands that have done.
Every Time I Die is from
benefits
Buffalo
for it.
too. By the way, I looked it up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I got their last album. All right.
Into the book.
So Everything Is Wrong is
Everything is going wrong.
Oh, I'm sorry. Everything is going wrong. Full color.
Because it's not everything is wrong, because it's about anxiety. I mean,
Correct,
it's not all
correct.
about anxiety, but there's a lot of stuff about anxiety. And so that's always the belief that the future is
140 pages,
not good.
140 something pages, because the last story starts.
I think it's at 150 plus, yeah.
Yeah, because the last story starts at page 140. Last story starts at page 140. Is that what I said? I'm not sure. But it's full color. 60 plus creators, all kinds of different people. And I mentioned that Haley Boros was the one that we got this one from. But there's all kinds of people, all kinds of stories. And it let me get my notes here, because it was yeah, you can take a look at the book while I'm pulling my notes up.
I know I've read it. I just want to bring up this one thing about anthologies that the reason I'm not a huge, I mean, I love them.
Yeah.
But it makes it so hard to review them, because there's so many good things, and it's like we can't talk about every artist.
Exactly.
But I remember reading the first story and being like, oh my God.
The first story. That's my very first thing.
Okay.
The first story. Although I've personally never had anxiety or any type of depression, I can relate to this story. I can relate to a lot of these stories, especially with music. Music, I love music still, but it's not as important to me as it was growing up.
Right.
I mean, and I think it was for a lot of people. The other day, we were dancing around the house playing music. We were playing The Used, and you said,
oh my God.
And what did you say? Do you remember?
No.
You said, this song is sounds so much different when you're not depressed.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. I remember loving The Used when I was in high school, and I remember how much suicidal ideation I was dealing with, and it was like, no wonder I love this music. Like, it just, it was a way to just get all those feelings out, because you were feeling all of it, and you can't say that to anybody, because you tell people that suicide is on your mind, and you're, when you drive down the road, you think, I'm sorry, like, okay, we should probably have put a trigger warning on this. Like, we're probably going to be talking about suicide and mental health stuff. And so if that's something that's triggering to you, this might not be the best episode for you to listen to before I continue. We did talk about the Trevor Project, which may have clued people in, but yeah, I just want to make sure you turn this off if it's not good for your mental health right now. But I have very, very vivid memories from the time I could drive, probably before that, even driving down the street, just going off the road. Like, just do it. I could see myself doing it. I could see myself just driving into the ditch and just ending everything, speed up to 100 miles an hour and just drive off the road. And then I would say to myself that I was a chicken shit and couldn't go through with it. And that is the only thing that kept me alive to this point. And then I think about that and I'm like, God, that's so fucked up that I felt that way for so long. And I never reached out for help. I never did anything about it. I just said, well, I'm a chicken shit. Like, I'll never be able to actually go through with this. And it wasn't like, that was it. That was all that mattered, was that I wasn't brave enough.
Well, music, and not just punk music, but I mean, this is about punk music. And you could see where a lot of people found, like, My Chemical Romance and those similar bands, like you said, like The Used, and probably some other bands similar to that were all in that same genre there.
I remember being really scared to let you listen to The Used with me, and to actually be able to, like, sing it out loud.
See, to me,
my passion, because I was like,
I understand.
Oh, he's gonna know how I feel with the way that I sing it. But you never clued in, or at least you never said anything about it.
Because to me, music is music, and sometimes I never, like, bought the lyrics. It was just like I would sing it and not really think about it. They were just words that somebody wrote. But you think about it, I mean, Chris Cornell, I mean, the first Soundgarden album is like all about darkness and death and everything, and he ended up, doing that himself. Chester Bennington from Linkin Park, same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, these people who you think have everything and they still suffer from mental illness and still.
Well, because like there's only so much, like you have all the money in the world isn't going to pull you out of that. Yeah. And especially when,
well, you would think
probably that, when you have that money, I would imagine if you don't have control of your mental, well, not that you need to control, but if you don't have the resources, and I mean, in this country, people don't value mental health. They don't think that
it's about capitalism and only capitalism.
Exactly. And I think that it's starting to get better. We're starting to, and maybe it's just because of my bubble and the people that I surround myself with understand how important your mental health is. But, people see going to therapy as a weakness,
Exactly.
And
well, the Sopranos, he's a mob boss, but the whole show is about him going to a psychiatrist. The first episode, that's what he's doing. He's in a psychiatrist's office.
But was that done to make him seem weak, or was that done to?
No, it wasn't to make. It was because he knew he had a problem, and he wanted to try and fix it, but he couldn't tell.
The beginning of it was all about. The beginning of it was like, I shouldn't be here.
Well, yes, because he knew if anybody found out, if anybody saw him going there, it would make him seem weak, and he could.
But why? Why would it make him seem weak?
Because
shouldn't that be something
you're
we're
a mob
all doing?
boss. You're supposed to be a tough guy. You don't need that. You have a counselor. You don't need to have your head checked.
How much education on mental health does your counselor have?
Yeah, exactly.
They weren't like Deanna Troi.
Yeah, exactly. But seriously,
that is a counseling.
Exactly. But I mean, that's the way it's portrayed, especially I think for men.
Yeah, no, for sure. That whole machismo, don't feel,
Yep.
And if you're feeling things, then you're not a man.
No, you're not strong. How could you lead a mob? What the hell you call it? A mob family? Or how could you run be CEO of a company if you got to go see a psychiatrist? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of this, and like you've said, it's bad in our country, but there's so many good stories. And going back to the more in music, but just this morning I read apparently Lizzo did a TikTok talking about doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how much fame or anything, you have to work on fixing all of those things about yourself. Well, because money is not going to fix it.
And I think that that's a huge part of it, is that people want to just pop a pill. Like it's really easy to just say, it's really easy when you break your bones, you go to the doctor and they, put you in a cast or do surgery or whatever they have to do, and then you get better. But mental health is not something, sure, you can take a pill, and a lot of times you end up going through. In fact, one of the stories I think talks about going through it might be that first story, going through the roundabout of pills, trying to figure out what works for you. It's one of these stories. Yeah. I can't remember which one. Well, but taking all these different pills and then going off of them because it's not working right, and then going on a different one until you find a roulette. I think that I can't remember which story it is, but it's the roulette of pills, and hopefully you find something that works for you. To get to a level where you can start to actually logically think about the problems, right? And you can start to work through some of your shit. Like taking a magical pill doesn't happen. You take the pill to balance out the chemicals in your brain,
right? So then you can
they work properly, and then you can start to work through the shit. Right. But you have to be able and willing to do that effort, to do that talking through, to do that understanding of yourself. And I think that a lot of us struggle because we're not like, that's why I mean I always say therapy is for everybody should be in therapy, but it doesn't really work that way, because you have to be willing to put in the work to be successful with therapy.
You have to have a therapist that understands you too, and
you have to be willing to fire your therapist. And saying fire sounds mean. You have to be willing to change therapists if this one doesn't, if you don't feel like it's like you're on the same page, or if their approach isn't the right one for you. And part of that is listening to your body and knowing who sounds like they fit. Now, you don't want to just switch a therapist because one's telling you something you don't want to hear, because I mean, part of their job is to tell you something you might not want to hear. But it's a process. Going to therapy is a process. Honestly, I feel like people should treat doctors that way too, because not every family doctor that you go to is going to are you going to get along with? And that kind of sucks when you live in rural areas and there's only one doctor in the area or whatever.
And you have no
that's
choice.
Who everybody goes to, and
they're conservative and
right, exactly. You're trans and you live in a rural area, and the one doctor in town isn't gonna help you at all. And it's like, well, what do? I just have to fucking suffer.
So the very first story called "Anxiety Punk" by Shelby Criswell. Again, I could feel this because growing up, everybody. If you listen to music, you find music that you can feel. I used to listen to when I was a teenager. I listened to heavy metal. I listened to Ozzy Osbourne and stuff. And you could just put your headphones on and close your eyes and just fall into it and forget about everything. And like in this story, he talks about punk rock had a hand in saving me when I was suicidal and low, like with ramshackle glories, your heart is a muscle the size of your fist. And he talks about how punk became the soundtrack of his everyday life. And I think about it, and I know I told you this. I remember this when after I had my cancer, and I went. I had my last checkup after I had gone through everything, and went to the doctor. I had to go to a different place too. I went to a hospital, and the final test, and they said you're cancer free. And going home, it was just this wave of emotions going over me. And Linkin Park came on the radio, and I just put it full blast and started screaming it, and I was crying, and it was just all of these emotions just pouring out of me. The song, it was just like the perfect song for how I felt at that time, and it was just the right song at the right time, and it I still think about it when I hear the song.
Yeah.
But there was the whole book is. They talk about there's a lot of gender dysphoria stories, and
there's lots of trans author creators.
They talk about alcoholism and suicide, how how music can affect you in so many different ways. It can help you get through sadness or pain, and with punk music, it was interesting how some people, they were outsiders or outcasts to society themselves, but they found punk music was something that they could be a part of. They would put on, basically their costume that they could hide themselves with their spikes and their spiked hair. And I remember our neighbor in Buffalo who obviously had come up through that, because every once in a blue moon you'd see him with his hair. It was like a foot high, into a giant mohawk.
Yeah.
And then other times you'd see him and he has long hair, and you didn't know anything. And the first time I saw him, I'm like, what the fuck? He's got his hair up. It's like a foot high, spiked all the way down. And, and you could, he had to have been part of that scene or something when he was younger.
Yeah. Well, even after, really. He
obviously was after still, because he was an adult with kids.
Right. Yeah.
Married too. Yeah. But yeah.
Not that that's significant.
No. But I'm saying, he was all just like a whole family guy, and they even went to like.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes,
punks can have families too.
Yes. So there's a story. There's a story in there called Sink. It talks about suicide. That was another really good story.
That's a lot of them too. Is thinking about water and drowning and
yeah. There's another one here. Let me see the book for a second.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. Were there any that like stood out to you?
Honestly, they all felt really familiar to me. Just reading it, I connected with it so much.
I'm sure.
Much like they connected to their music.
Like
when you read
this
about
one.
Yeah.
This one. What's it called? Notes from. Go ahead.
Notes from. Oh, that was from the other thing. That was cool too. They had little notes in there too that weren't graphic novels.
It's called Soft by Gabriel Howard.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's about somebody taking hormones.
Yeah.
And how they were changing, and they weren't quite sure how they felt about it.
Yeah, which I think is pretty common, but I think people don't like to talk about that, right? Because when you take hormones, your body is going to change in whatever way it's going to change. It's no different than anybody going through puberty. Like, everybody that goes through puberty doesn't necessarily like every part of it, you know? Some people who grow boobs don't like the way their boobs look. You know, some people that grow facial hair don't like how their facial hair comes in. And then, so no matter what happens, like, they're always, you know, people go bald and it's like, I don't like being bald. So no matter what happens, it's something that's common for everybody. But trans people who decide to take hormones are now going through this. And certainly there's things where it's like, I really wish that if I a lot of people I've read, you know, if I could turn off whatever makes my facial hair grow, you know, I would love that, because, you know, I don't want facial hair. Unfortunately, you can't do that. So sometimes things happen and you're not expecting them, or you are expecting them and you don't want them to happen. And so I know that I've read that a lot from other people's perspectives, that you're not sure if that's what's going to happen. And sometimes it happens and you're like, oh, this feels really good. I had no idea that I was going to love this.
Right.
So yeah, but I think, like I said, it's, you know, it's happening when you're an adult versus when, a lot of times anyway, versus when you're a kid. So I think kids don't necessarily have that same logic thinking through it as somebody who's transitioning as an adult, and constantly having societal pressure telling you shouldn't do this.
Right.
You know, and so you're like, well, should I be doing this? Is this what I really want? You know, I think that's a lot of it too, is that you're dealing with all these outside pressures and not necessarily listening to your own body. And maybe you are, and you know that that doesn't feel good for you. And you know, God, I'm like all over the range of saying things like, everybody's valid. I love everyone. It's perfectly valid to take testosterone and not want facial hair. That's totally cool. But anyway, yeah, I don't remember where I was getting at there, but I think that it's just a really common thing that people who are cis might say, well, if you don't want facial hair, then don't, you know, go on testosterone. Or if you don't want your, I'm speaking from my own perspective, so I don't know a whole lot of the, or if you don't want your breasts to grow, then don't go on estrogen, kind of thing. So I don't know. It's people who are cis look at it, I think, in very black and white. Whereas when we're trans, it's like such a spectrum of feelings. You don't know what's happening, but sometimes you're an adult and you know what to expect, but you don't really know what to expect. It's like when you go to the doctor to go on hormones, they're like, well, this is the long list of things that can happen. And some of them will stick around even if you stop taking these hormones, and some of them might go away if you start. And we don't really know everything about this. And it's like, well, okay, like I know that this feels right, so let's go for it. And sometimes you don't, and not taking hormones doesn't make you any less trans. Have to say that part too, because that's absolutely true.
Because you can be that person without the hormones.
Well, yeah, you can call yourself trans without taking hormones. You can be trans without taking hormones or having any kind of surgery or anything else. You know, that doesn't make you less trans to not transition.
So another story, Sync, that I mentioned, is story and illustrations by Liana Kangas, written by Joe Corallo and lettered by Cardinal Ray. Cardinal Ray, we've talked.
Oh yeah, Bingo Love, right? No, I get them mixed up.
Crowded.
Was it Crowded?
I think both of them. Anyhow, this is a sad story about suicide. How these three people, two cousins and this other guy, they hung out punk shows and stuff, and one day he decided to take his life. And woman thought that the one woman thought that she'd still have her cousin, but her cousin spiraled out of control too, and just shut herself off from the world. And that kind of stuff is extremely sad. And there's several stories in here about people who this is one of them, Anxiety Shit Show with Matt Miner did the story, and Lucas Kowalczyk did the art. Funky artwork. I really liked it. But it was somebody who suffered from face the world. I'm going to do it. I'm going to face the world. Be social. Be okay. Be around people.
Yeah, you think that if you just push it hard enough, if you just make yourself do it, then it'll all be okay. And sometimes it does work. Sometimes you force yourself to do it, and you'll go through it, and you find out that it all worked out, and that the things that you thought would happen didn't actually happen, and maybe you eventually had a good time.
Well, in this story, though, in order to get through that, they need to drink. They need to drink.
Yeah.
And drink and drink, and the next thing they know, they missed the show because they had passed out, because they were trying to, get themselves psyched up so they could go do this and be in public, and it shows them throwing a ticket into a drawer with another 100 tickets of shows that they had missed, because same thing, because their anxiety and everything was so much that they could never get over it, and it just happened over and over, and it's extremely sad to think that those kind of things it's so much that somebody just can't get over.
Yeah.
And alcohol is the only way that to get them to that point, but they get to that point and it's too far then. There was this other one too that I related to, because I used to see, it's called Rhythm, and it's about this older guy who goes to must be like open mic kind of thing, and he goes and he plays his guitar and sings his songs and stuff. And he's hoping that these record execs, music execs will sign him. And they're like, sorry, sweetie, you're a bit too old for our punk demographic. Yeah, it's hard to market those kind of optics, mate. Kids want to see themselves in their rock stars, not their dads. Ever thought about repackaging yourself for a more mature audience? And so he would go home and it would all just eat away at him. And then he'd go do it the next day. And I used to see, there were several people back in Buffalo that they were older people when I was younger that used to go to the shows and used to see him at all the shows. And they were always hanging around, and probably the same kind of thing, whether they were musicians or not, they just wanted to be in that crowd, that music. And it happened, I saw, there were a handful of them that I used to see all the time.
Right.
The one guy I think used to work like stage work.
Oh, really?
And I would see him walking around the streets too. But yeah, there's just so many stories in here that are just so good. It's a wonderful book, and I don't know what else we could say about it.
I mean, did we talk about it being full color?
Yep.
And okay. All of the artwork, again,
all completely different styles. Yeah.
I mean, it's an anthology, so you expect that. But it's one of my favorite things about anthologies is because you can see such a wide variety. Each person has their own touch. And even when they're kind of similar, they're still so different. A lot of them were realistic drawings of people, and yet still you can see the differences between them, and I really love that.
Yeah, no.
And then even talking about like tattoos and stuff, and making all these just talking about how they survive mental health stuff, going through, and how music helped them get through that. And I don't know, it was an amazing book. And I agree. I think that even if you haven't struggled with anxiety, this last story was really eye-opening to me. I didn't know a whole lot about schizophrenia, and they talk about how they have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and how that they don't really like to talk about it necessarily. It's not what they lead with, because people are the two things. Let's see, either just the things not to say to somebody.
Oh yeah.
When they tell you that they have schizophrenia or that they're schizophrenic. It's like, oh, I'm so sorry, or you're so brave.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, well, it's just it's just me. It's just who I am. It's not easy, and I think that that's the key thing to pull away from all of it, is that living with mental health stuff is not easy, but we get through it.
Yep. Everything is Going Wrong, edited by Mark Bouchard. Great book.
And if you can follow the book on Twitter. I had that pulled up, and now I think it's EIGW
something anthology, something like that. Yeah, yeah. I had it up. I had it up too. But,
I did too, and I.
But.
Yep.
Yeah.
EIGW Anthology.
Yeah.
On Twitter.
Yeah. No.
So.
Good book. Really good book.
I know their shop was under construction
Yeah,
to purchase.
but
from
it's this time of year too. I mean, might be something good to read, or
Absolutely.
looking for a gift for someone too. Anyhow, until next week, because it will be next week. My name is Mike,
And I'm Parker.
and this is
The
Graphic
Graphic Novel
Novel Podcast.